Thank you very
So,
much for that introduction. Welcome, colleagues, and thank you for allowing me to present my research here today. The title of my research has already been stated, but just for the record there, it's Can we afford it? And we looked at the association between financial aid and time to completion in accounting higher education in South Africa, and this was specifically a literature review. In terms of the outline of my paper, we're going to go through, or I'm going to go through the South African context, then the background of the study, the motivation, the objective, and coupled with the objective, also the research questions. I'm going to go through the methodology, looking at the literature, and then come to a conclusion. And then because all research should have a trajectory, I'm going to let you into a little bit of snippet, interesting facts on what the numbers actually present, which wasn't part of the paper. Within the South African context, historically, there's been limited access to quality education in the country. And even if students have access, you need to graduate, you need to perform well to be academically successful. Now, our Black students, and that's the Black composite term as defined by the Department of Higher Education and Training, and in South Africa, that includes Black, African, colored, and for my international colleagues, that's mixed race, Indian and Asian students. So Black students are more likely to be academically excluded, have higher dropout rates, and have lower graduation rates. The higher education institutions in South Africa have been tasked with equalizing access and improving the quality of academic success. Access has improved in recent years, so therefore the higher education focus has shifted to increase throughput, graduation, and participation rates. The motivation of the study, my main research area is looking at the determinants of success, students' academic success, and this was part of a master's dissertation, and my student was, or is still, the financial manager of the Commerce faculty at the University of Cape Town. And our expertise, coupled with the University of Cape Town's aim to improve graduation rates, resulted in the study. With respect to improving graduation rates at UCT, we are particularly interested with Black student experiences and their impediments to their success, and how we can help improve students to realize their potential. The objective of the research was to establish the role of financial aid amongst the factors impacting degree completion in South Africa. And to do that, we needed to answer 4 research questions. Firstly, why is it important to understand academic success? Secondly, how can the key variables for students' academic success be categorized? Thirdly, what are the factors affecting academic success? And then lastly, as reported in the literature, what's the impact of financial aid on students' academic success in South Africa? Our methodology was qualitative in nature. It was essentially a search of Google Scholar and the UCT databases over a 15-year time period from 2005 to 2019. And we looked at all relevant research and evaluated it in terms of the research questions to identify what the gap is within the South African research and where the study could go. With respect to understanding academic success, cognitive and non-cognitive learning and development processes are extremely complex. It's very challenging to measure success. And if we look at our standardized testing over the years, it's almost impossible to assess students' attitudes, strategies, skills, behaviors through that assessment process. Past research is most commonly being performed on educational achievements. So that's your grade point average, your GPA, credit accumulation, degree completion, time to completion. And I would also include there under credit accumulation, how a student has performed in a certain course. In terms of a theoretical framework, there are multiple frameworks that we could have followed, such as Tinto, Bean, or the Biggs 3P model, but we decided on the Aston's input environment outcome or output model, where students will bring inputs with them from their past into the university. There will also be the university environment, which will then affect how they study, etc. And those two, the inputs and the environment, will then impact the outcome, and in this context, on-time degree completion. The reason why Aston's model was the best model for our research was because within the environment, the higher education institution, your universities, can impact that environment and can control it. that means that we can put support programs in place to help assist our students. In terms of the student input characteristics, research has been performed on race, on gender, on previous academic results. Sorry, just with respect to race and gender there, at UCT in terms of this study or the further research after the study, race and gender is self-classified as the students enter into the university. Previous academic results also impact student success, and that's your high school GPA, mathematics, or for my US colleagues, math, grade 12 accounting, tertiary institution GPA, your course results, and then also scant research has been performed on the type of school. And in South Africa, there's a lot of discussion about what type of school you went to. We've essentially got three categories here. We've got our private schools, and we have our public schools, and then we have our previous Model C schools. The previous Model C schools were the schools that during the apartheid era, only white students were allowed to attend. Now, those Model C schools are partially funded by students, or rather by parents paying the fees, and there's a very small amount of funding from the government. So the arguments has always been that if you come to university from a private school or a previous Model C school, then you are advantaged, and if you come from a pure public school, you are disadvantaged. And so that would be interesting whether this is an input characteristic that does affect on-time degree completion. In terms of the institutional environment, we've got language of instruction. In South Africa, we have 11 official languages, and the vast majority of tertiary institutions teach in English. And so therefore, we've got a large proportion of our students who are attending with English as a second or third language. And it's extremely difficult to learn and to understand in a language that isn't your home language. Then we've got the integration into academic and social systems, and specifically the engagement between students and faculty and between staff. That's social. If there is a social support system there, students are more motivated, they're more engaged, and they're more likely to perform well. And then the focus of this research is financial aid, and we're looking at it here in the context of the environment. With respect to financial aid,
5 more minutes.
Thank you. With respect to financial aid, we've got the argument of fees versus tuition-free education. Should tertiary education be fee-free? What level of education should be fee-free? There is a potential for raised tuition fees. So studies have shown that if you raise the tuition fee after the minimum time to completion, for example, if it's a 3-year undergraduate degree, in the 4th year, the fees will increase. Studies have shown that then students are more likely to complete the degree on time. We look at the cost-sharing model, and in terms of the cost-sharing model, governments will subsidize a certain amount of the fees. However, as we know, education costs have been rising rapidly over the last decade, and this has then resulted in a lot of students needing to be employed while they are studying, so part-time employment, to subsidize either their fees or their living costs while they are studying. And with respect to student employment, studies have shown that a small amount of hours per week, so under 25 hours per week, doesn't have a detrimental effect on on-time degree completion. But if you are full-time working and part-time studying, then that does have an effect on on-time degree completion. The purpose of financial aid is to ensure that education is affordable, but what is the ideal level of aid? In South Africa, we've got the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, where families below a certain level of income will receive financial aid from the government. However, that financial aid is only for fees. What about living costs, and what about food costs? Food security is very topical at the moment in South Africa.
3 more minutes.
Thank you. So in conclusion on the paper that I'm presenting at the moment, understanding factors affecting students' academic success is important. How can we better support our students? And within the Aston model, how can we put programs in place within the university environment to ensure that our students complete their degrees on time and are academically successful? There are many factors that contribute to success. And within the South African context, financial aid research has been mainly focused on access, but not on degree completion. In terms of future research, we've started crunching the numbers, and we've looked at a sample of 844 students enrolled from 2013 to 2016. So for a 3-year undergraduate degree, the earliest that they would have graduated is 2015. We used a hierarchical logistic regression model with independent variables being gender, race, school quintile, so that's a type of school. And then there are tests that students have to write prior to entry into university. The first one is an academic literacy performance test. Then there's a quantitative literacy performance test, a math test. Those would be the input characteristics that we looked at. And then in terms of environment, there's a support program that we offer to students in first year to help them transition between secondary and tertiary education. And then, does the student have financial aid, and do they have gap aid? That gap aid is for students who are on NSFAS, so that's funding from the government. That pays for fees, but what about accommodation, and what about food? So gap aid is often provided by the university, and at UCT we provide gap aid to many students to provide them with places to stay and to provide them with food. And in terms of the findings so far, it is found that female students are 40% more likely to graduate on time than their male peers. White students were 45% more likely to graduate than their black peers. If you had one extra mark in the quantitative literacy test at the beginning before university, 1%, one extra mark there, you were 2% more likely to graduate on time. And students on financial aid were 25% less likely to complete their degree on time. Thank you very much. And are there any questions?
Thank you. You still have 26 seconds. Any questions? Any comments?
I loved your research, of course. That was really nice and very informative. And I was just curious on that raised tuition fees. You know, would that work at Medgar Evers College? Would that work in the United States? How does that work?
I don't know. So those studies that were performed in Europe. The study that I'm thinking of was in Germany, and the model that they followed at the beginning was fee-free education at the beginning, and then what they decided to do was they decided to implement fees after the minimum time to degree completion. I'm not sure it was 3 years or 4 years. And so if you completed your degree in that time, then you didn't have to pay for your education. But if you stayed on longer, then you would have to pay. Subsequently, that institution now does have, it's a nominal amount, a nominal fee for the 3 or 4 years. But then there's still that raised component. And there still is that incentive then for the students to ensure that they do finish their degree on time.